Why do religions exist? A comparison between early Buddhism and Nichiren Buddhism. There are countless religions in the world. Religion is something unique to human beings. Throughout history, people have contemplated the nature of life, the structure of the universe, our relationship with nature, and the meaning of happiness. Over time, these reflections gradually gave rise to different religions. Although religions differ greatly, they often develop through a similar process. First, people ask fundamental questions. Where does life come from? Why do we suffer? What is the meaning of life? From these questions emerge a particular worldview and understanding of life. Based on that worldview, each religion defines its ultimate goal of happiness and then establishes a path of practice to reach that goal. In other words, the process can be understood as questions about life and suffering, leading to a worldview and philosophy of life, which leads to an ultimate goal of happiness, which then leads to a path of spiritual practice. Take Christianity, for example. Christianity teaches that God created all things, and human beings are His creation. Humanity bears original sin, and this present world is temporary. Human life is lived only once. The ultimate goal is to enter heaven after death and live in the presence of God. Accordingly, spiritual practice centers on deepening one's faith in and devotion to God. Rejecting or blaspheming God leads to separation from Him and ultimately to hell. The worldview determines the goal, and the goal determines the practice. The same basic structure can be found in early Buddhism, where the foundation is the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. The Four Noble Truths teach that life is characterized by suffering because it is impermanent. The cause of suffering is craving, attachment, ignorance, and the delusions that create karma. By eliminating these causes, one attains enlightenment. When karma is completely extinguished, rebirth also comes to an end, and after death, one enters Nirvana. The Noble Eightfold Path provides the practical discipline that leads to this awakening. From this perspective, several important conclusions follow. Karma, even good karma, ultimately perpetuates the cycle of rebirth. Therefore, liberation requires the complete extinction of karma. Enlightenment is the state in which ignorance and attachment have been overcome. The purpose of ethical practice is not to accumulate good karma, but to eliminate the causes of karma altogether. Nirvana is the final state beyond birth and death because the karmic force that sustains rebirth has ceased. Thus, in early Buddhism, the ultimate goal is to bring the cycle of rebirth itself to an end. A different starting point changes everything. Now consider a simple question. What if the very first assumption, the understanding of life, suffering, and reality were completely different? If our understanding of life changes, then our worldview changes. If our worldview changes, then our definition of happiness also changes. And if the goal changes, the path of practice must also change. This is precisely what happened several times throughout the history of Buddhism. The Lotus Sutra, a new vision of life. Near the end of his life, the Buddha presented a radically different perspective in the Lotus Sutra. Rather than focusing primarily on escaping birth and death, the Lotus Sutra reveals that every living being inherently possesses Buddha nature. This Buddha nature is not something to be acquired in the distant future. It already exists within every individual at this very moment. This marked a profound shift in Buddhist thought. The emphasis moved from becoming a Buddha to revealing the Buddha nature that has always existed within. The principle of mutual possession. Modern scientific ideas such as fractals and holograms offer an interesting analogy. In both concepts, the whole is reflected within every part. Likewise, according to the Lotus Sutra, every single moment of life contains the complete potential of life itself. No matter who we are or what circumstances we face, Buddha nature exists within us as an inseparable aspect of our lives. Although science and Buddhism address different questions, both suggest a deeply interconnected view of reality. Eternal life and karma. If Buddha nature is eternal and exists only within each individual life, then individual life itself must also be eternal. Just as energy changes form without being destroyed, life continues through endless transformation rather than absolute annihilation. Within this eternal flow, karma is not merely something negative. Karma represents the unique continuity and individuality accumulated through each person's actions and experiences across the ongoing process of life. Rather than being something that must simply disappear, karma becomes part of what makes each life unique. Nichiren's revolutionary interpretation. Nichiren developed the Lotus Sutra's teaching into a practical philosophy of life. He emphasized several principles. Beginningless Buddhahood means that our Buddha nature has existed from beginningless time. Changing poison into medicine means that suffering can become the very source of wisdom, compassion, and personal growth. Lightening karmic retribution means that karma is not erased, but its effects can be transformed through the manifestation of Buddhahood. Earthly desires are enlightenment means that anger, desire, and attachment are not destroyed. They are transformed into wisdom, courage, compassion, and positive action. Birth and death are Nirvana means that Nirvana is not a place beyond life. Birth and death themselves become the expression of Buddhahood when Buddha nature is manifested. Transforming deep-seated karma means that our past karma becomes the foundation for our mission and happiness, rather than the cause of endless suffering. The land of tranquil light exists. Enlightenment is not reserved for another world after death. This very world becomes the Pure Land when people awaken to the truth of life. Two different goals. This leads to two fundamentally different understandings of Buddhist practice. In early Buddhism, practice aims to extinguish karma, end rebirth, and eventually enter nirvana. In Nichiren Buddhism, practice aims to reveal the Buddha nature that already exists within life, here and now. The objective is not to escape life, but to transform life. Not to eliminate suffering, but to transform suffering into wisdom. Not to reject birth and death, but to reveal Buddhahood within birth and death itself. Nichiren established the practice of chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as the direct means to awaken this inherent Buddha nature. The purpose is to live each day with greater wisdom, courage, compassion, and life force by bringing forth the enlightened potential already present within one's own life. The difference between early Buddhism and Nichiren Buddhism is not merely a difference in practice. It begins with a completely different understanding of life itself. A different understanding of life leads to a different worldview. A different worldview leads to a different definition of happiness. And that different goal naturally gives rise to a different path of practice. In the next video, we will explore an even deeper question. Where exactly do Buddha nature and karma exist within our lives? We will also explore the process of death and how life continues and is reborn into the next existence. Through the Buddhist teaching of the 9 consciousnesses, we will examine the inner structure of consciousness and discover how these profound principles operate within every life.